Hey man, let me tell you something that will fundamentally change how you understand women forever. No matter how good you are to her, no matter how many years you've invested, no matter how many times she's said you're the one, there is a force operating inside her that never stops evaluating you. It's called hypergamy, and it doesn't sleep. It's not something she chooses. It's not something she controls. It's something wired into her DNA over millions of years of evolution. A silent algorithm constantly scanning, constantly measuring, constantly asking one question: is he still the best I can do? Now, before you get angry at women, understand this. Hypergamy isn't evil. It's not betrayal waiting to happen. It's nature's quality control system for reproduction. It's how the human species ensured that only the strongest genes survived. But here's what most men never learn. Hypergamy isn't primarily about money. It isn't about your job title or the car you drive or how much you can provide materially. It's about energy, it's about how you carry yourself, how you respond to pressure, how you command your reality, how you make her feel in your presence, safe yet slightly on edge, secure yet never fully certain she has you figured out. You can be worth millions and still feel like a liability to her if your energy screams weakness. Because hypergamy doesn't process logic, it processes instinct. And once you understand how to speak to that instinct, you stop fearing female nature and start working with it. Here's the trap that destroys most relationships, and almost every man falls into it. He meets her, he pursues her, he wins her, and then he exhales. He thinks, I got her. The hard part is over. Now I can relax. He stops doing what made him attractive. He gets comfortable. He lets himself go, not just physically, but energetically. The hunger that drove him disappears. The ambition that excited her fades. The mystery that kept her curious evaporates. And he doesn't notice anything wrong, because she's still there, still sleeping next to him, still saying she loves him. But something is shifting beneath the surface. In her emotional world, a slow decay has begun. See, hypergamy doesn't measure where you are, it measures where you're going. And the moment she senses you've stopped climbing, stopped growing, stopped becoming more, she starts, often unconsciously, scanning for someone who hasn't stopped. This is the part that blindsides men. He didn't cheat, he didn't abuse, he didn't neglect in any obvious way. He just became static. And to hypergamy, static equals decline. Because in her evolutionary programming, a man who stops growing is a man whose value is falling. Even if nothing external has changed, her internal attraction sensors start sending warning signals. She becomes less affectionate, less interested, less available emotionally, and he sits there confused, thinking, but I've done everything right. No, brother, you did everything predictably, and that's not the same thing. So how do you actually satisfy hypergamy permanently? Here's the brutal truth. You don't satisfy it with a single victory. You don't satisfy it with one promotion, one milestone, one grand gesture. You satisfy it by becoming a man who is always in motion, always evolving, always deepening, always becoming more. Not for her, that's the critical distinction. You don't grow to keep her. You grow because growth is what a man does. Because stagnation is death to the masculine spirit, because your purpose demands it. But here's what happens when you grow for yourself. She feels it. She might not be able to explain it logically. She won't sit down and say, I'm attracted to your continuous self-improvement trajectory. But in her body, in her nervous system, in that ancient part of her brain that's been selecting for survival for millennia, she senses a man who is becoming more. And that sensation triggers something primal. It tells her, this man is rising, this man is building, this man isn't slowing down for anyone. And that, to her hypergamous instinct, is intoxicating. It's not about the gym membership or the business success specifically. It's about the energy of a man in motion, a man who wakes up with fire, a man whose vision extends beyond the relationship, a man who is building an empire, internal or external, regardless of who's watching. When you become that, she doesn't feel like she's settling. She feels like she's won, and that feeling of winning you is what keeps hypergamy satisfied, because she knows she's attached to a rising tide, and rising tides don't give women anxiety. They give women security mixed with excitement. That combination is rare. That combination is addictive. Now let me give you the second pillar, mystery. Most men bleed themselves dry in the first few months. They reveal everything, every childhood trauma, every fear, every dream, every insecurity. They think vulnerability creates connection, and it can, in small earned doses. But most men don't give doses, they give floods. They pour their entire soul onto her lap like it's a gift she asked for, and then they wonder why she seems less curious, less invested, less magnetically drawn. Here's what's happening. You've given her the whole book, and a book with no unread pages doesn't get picked up again. Hypergamy thrives on uncertainty, not chaos, uncertainty. The feeling that there's more to discover, that she hasn't reached the bottom of who you are, that every layer she uncovers reveals another layer beneath. This isn't about being deceptive or withholding who you are maliciously. It's about understanding that your depth should be earned, not given away. The man who reveals himself slowly, deliberately, over years, he keeps her in a permanent state of fascination. She feels like she's on an endless expedition into his soul, and that expedition is the journey she wants to be on. But the man who empties himself in week 3, she's already seen everything. There's nowhere left to go, and hypergamy starts wondering what else is out there. So guard your depth, not from fear, but from value. Because when she has to work to understand you, she invests. And investment creates attachment. That's the secret most men miss. She doesn't want full access to your mind. She wants to feel like she's earning access to something rare. Here's the third pillar, and this is where most relationships die. Frame control. Let me define what I mean by frame. Frame is who sets the emotional reality of the relationship. Frame is whose reality the other person enters when you're together. Frame is who leads and who follows emotionally. Most men surrender their frame within weeks of dating a woman they really like. They start deferring to her moods. When she's upset, they get anxious. When she's distant, they chase. When she creates drama, they get pulled into it, and they think this is love. They think responsiveness equals care. But here's what's actually happening in her psyche. She's testing to see if you can be moved. Every emotional storm she throws at you is an unconscious question. Is this man solid? Can he handle me? Or will he crumble? And when you crumble, when you abandon your center to chase her validation, when you absorb her chaos instead of remaining grounded, you fail the test. She won't tell you that you failed. She probably doesn't even consciously know she was testing. But something in her attraction drops. Because women don't fantasize about men they can emotionally lead. They fantasize about surrendering to a man whose presence is so calm, so unshakable, so non-reactive that their storm cannot move him. That man becomes her anchor, her polarity, her stability in her own chaos. And when you become that, when she throws her emotional hurricane at you and you simply observe it without being swept away, something happens that she can't explain. She softens, she trusts deeper, she respects more, not because you fixed her emotions, but because you didn't need to be fixed by hers. That's frame control. And without it, hypergamy will never be satisfied, because a man who can be emotionally hijacked is a man who can be emotionally replaced. Now let's talk about something that sounds counterintuitive, but is absolutely critical. Your attention is your most valuable currency, and most men are spending it like it's worthless. They text instantly, they call whenever she wants, they rearrange their schedules at her request, they explain their every move, they're perpetually available, and they think this is how you show a woman you care. But here's how hypergamy interprets it. Easy access equals low value. I need you to understand this at a biological level. Female selection mechanisms are designed to assess value, and value is almost always associated with scarcity. Things that are rare are precious, things that are abundant are cheap. When you give your attention freely, without any requirement for it to be earned, you communicate something to her primal brain. I'm not that valuable because valuable things require effort to obtain. This doesn't mean you ignore her. This doesn't mean you play games or create artificial distance. It means you have a life that's full with or without her. It means your attention is precious because you're building something that demands it. It means when you're with her, you're fully present, but you're not always available because you have a mission that calls. That scarcity does something to her hypergamous instinct. It triggers the chase. It triggers investment. It triggers the feeling that she's winning something rare every time she gets your focus. And that feeling of winning you, not just having you, but winning you, is what keeps her emotionally locked in. The man, who is always available, becomes furniture, expected, taken for granted. The man whose attention must be earned becomes valuable, sought after, obsessed over. Guard your attention like a king. Give it intentionally, and watch how differently she responds. Here's the fifth pillar that most men never master: emotional neutrality. Let me paint the picture of what this looks like in practice. She's upset, maybe at you, maybe at life, maybe at nothing she can articulate. She throws her emotions at you: tears, silence, accusations, withdrawal. What does the average man do? He absorbs it, he reacts, he tries to fix, he explains, he apologizes for things he didn't do just to make the storm stop. He becomes destabilized. And what happens in her psychology? She loses a little respect because now she sees that her emotional state controls his. She has the remote to his inner peace, and that's a power no woman actually wants. Now contrast that with the man who responds with depth instead of reactivity. He sees her storm. He doesn't dismiss it, he acknowledges it, but he doesn't absorb it. He doesn't let it penetrate his center. He remains calm, present, unbothered at his core. He says less, but what he says lands with gravity. He doesn't try to fix immediately, he holds space. And in that space, something shifts. She feels something she didn't know she needed. A man whose peace is not conditional on her mood. A man who can hold her chaos without becoming chaotic himself. A man who is her anchor, not her emotional twin. That's the paradox that satisfies hypergamy at its deepest level. She wants to feel safe, and your groundedness provides that, but she also wants to feel that you're too solid to crack, and your non-reactivity proves it. It's safety and strength, stillness and power, the mountain that doesn't move, even when the storm rages. When you can hold that position, not from coldness, but from genuine centeredness, you become irreplaceable, because that level of emotional command is rarer than money, looks, or status, and hypergamy recognizes rare things. Let me tell you what happens when you start embodying all of this. Something shifts that you won't expect. She starts chasing you, not desperately, not from insecurity, but from a deep, almost involuntary pull. Her tone changes, she becomes softer, more attentive, she initiates more, she invests more energy into your connection, and it's not because you manipulated her, it's because you've become a man that her hypergamous instinct recognizes as rare. See, most men are chasing women, their energy is pursuing, seeking, proving, and that energy, even in small amounts, repels the very thing they want. But when you flip it, when you become the man who is so focused on his growth, so grounded in his frame, so intentional with his attention that she feels lucky to be in your orbit, the entire dynamic inverts. Suddenly, she's the one, wondering where she stands. Suddenly, she's the one investing to keep your interest. Suddenly, she's the one pursuing the feeling that you, and only you, provide. And here's the irony. You're not doing it to create that effect. You're doing it because it's who you've become. The attraction is a byproduct of your authenticity. That's when hypergamy stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like an ally, because the same instinct that would have driven her away from a stagnant man is now driving her deeper into you. Now let me share the ultimate truth that ties all of this together. The man who satisfies hypergamy permanently is not the man who gives her everything. He's the man who gives her something to rise toward. He's not her entertainer. He's her inspiration. He's not her emotional servant. He's her emotional anchor. He's not chasing her love. He's building a life so compelling that she wants to be part of it. There's a sentence that will change everything if you let it. She doesn't want to be the center of your life. She wants to orbit a man who has a center. Read that again. When you make her your center, when your happiness depends on her presence, when your mood rises and falls with her attention, when your purpose gets replaced by keeping her, you create pressure, and that pressure repels her. She feels the weight of being your entire world, and instinctively she wants to escape it, not because she doesn't love you, but because the feminine cannot respect what it has to carry. But when your life is full, when your mornings start with purpose, when your goals are clear, when your mission drives you whether she's there or not, she feels drawn in. She wants to become part of your story. Not the whole story, but an important chapter in a narrative that was already moving before she arrived and will continue moving regardless. That's the position that satisfies hypergamy. Not trying to win her, not trying to keep her, just being a man who knows who he is, where he's going, and what he's building, and inviting her to join if she can keep up. So let me leave you with this. Satisfying hypergamy is not a tactic. It's not a manipulation technique. It's not a game you play. It's a lifestyle you embody. It's becoming the kind of man who lives from abundance, not scarcity, from purpose, not desperation, from masculine truth, not emotional reaction. It's choosing growth over comfort, mystery over confession, frame over chaos, scarcity over saturation, neutrality over reactivity. It's recognizing that you cannot negotiate with hypergamy. You cannot explain your way into her lasting attraction. You cannot beg it into staying loyal. You can only become a man that it cannot outgrow. And here's the paradox that will set you free. The less you need her to stay, the more she needs to. The man who would be fine alone, whose life, purpose, and identity are complete without her validation, becomes the man she fears losing. Because she senses that he's not trapped, he's choosing, and being chosen by a man who doesn't need to choose, that's what every woman wants and almost never finds. So stop trying to satisfy her, satisfy yourself. Become the kind of man who wakes up with fire whether she's there or not. Become the kind of man whose presence fills a room without effort. Become the kind of man who doesn't flinch when she tests, doesn't chase when she pulls away, doesn't beg when she's uncertain. Become the kind of man who smiles at her chaos and returns to his purpose. Because when you do, you'll discover something that changes everything. You were never supposed to satisfy hypergamy. You were supposed to transcend it, to become so complete, so grounded, so magnetically aligned with your mission that her instincts stop scanning and start surrendering. Not because you trapped her, but because you became the man she knows she'll never find again. That's the only way to permanently satisfy hypergamy, not by giving her everything, by becoming everything to yourself first and letting her feel the undeniable gravity of a man who never stopped rising. She won't say it, she might not even understand it, but she'll know, somewhere deep in her wiring, that walking away from you would be the mistake of her life, and that knowing, not your words, not your promises, not your efforts, is what keeps her forever.